humble beginnings in Claremont, New Hampshire. A small town. You know, my my mother worked 3 jobs to get me to the point where I could go to college. I've always been a geek. I can't imagine not being a geek. I've been lucky enough through my career that I've been able to build and take. I started out in a really small techie company in the dial-up internet business back in the 90s. Branched that into working for the Hartford Insurance, which is talk about going from a company of 20 to a company of 40,000. Some of the key drivers in me, like my inability to keep my mouth shut. You asked the question, what advice you were talking about. What advice would you give to kids growing up these days? And I think doing something you love, boy, it certainly outweighs just doing something either for the money or whatnot. Not everybody's lucky enough to be able to do that, and in those scenarios, make sure you're giving yourself enough balance for the things that do make you tick, and never give up trying to get to the point where you can really do something that you love.
Welcome to episode 91 of American Real, where today we bring you technical advocate Jay Gagne, who provides a wealth of information about the fast-moving world of information technology. Jay breaks down topics such as cloud computing, disaster recovery, data storage, as well as advancements we can expect to see from technology in the future. Whether you're one to be intimidated by technology or work in the IT industry, Jay breaks down the bits and bytes for all to understand and relate to. In the second half of our conversation, we go for a ride on Jay's personal journey of becoming a computer geek, how he lost his hardworking mother to cancer when he was only 19, as well as his fears, motivators, and his love of music and audiobooks. Speaking of which, today's episode is brought to you by Audible.com, who is offering a free download of any book, along with a free 30-day trial to give you the opportunity to check out their service. Visit audibletrial.com/jgagne to claim your free offer, and where you can access 180,000 titles directly from your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. And now, without further ado, I bring to you Mr. Jay Gagne.
This is American Real. I am Roger Brooks. My guest today is Jay Gagne. You are a self-proclaimed geek and business-focused IT executive with a relentless passion for technology. You are one to over-explain to get your point across. You love to champion a good cause, and you're never shy away from a challenge. Jay, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
And I was really excited to do this. I know we had a reschedule a couple of times because of weather, but technology is such an important part of our lives today. And I think for the most part, most of us are not really aware of everything that happens behind the scenes to make really any business or our world run day to day.
Yeah, exactly. And I think one of the focuses in where I work at Razor Technology since it started 15 years ago, and for the 10 years that I've been there, is being able to take that complex, kind of crazy, option in technology and be able to explain it to everything from the CEO down to the grassroots, dive in the weeds and really get geeky about how to bits and bytes move and how to leverage an investment. Talk about the budget. Talk about the getting the max out of IT that you can, and you can do that on a personal level as well. I'm a geek. I love technology, but at the same time, you have to use technology to its best benefit. If that's for a business, it's how do you align the IT organization and the business? How do they march to the beat of the same drum to get the real value out of IT and not have the IT people be stuck in the back room, engage them in the business. What is the business trying to do? And challenge the technology folks to come up with the right technology to maximize what the business can do. On a personal level, it's no different. There's everything from your cell phone to your laptop to your iPad. Do you use technologies like home security and Alexa? There's a time and place for technology, but use it to better your business or better yourself. And while I would say maybe Alexa in the bathroom is too much, leveraging that technology in your vehicle, leveraging that technology to make it easier, safer for you to communicate with the rest of the world is the right approach.
Yeah, no, and I'm glad you just gave that example because we're all there. We all have our mini IT department, if you will, within our own household, especially if we have kids. There's multiple phones and multiple devices and cloud storage and everything else that we're all having to become familiar with. And I would say, just speaking for myself, have either taught myself or watched YouTube videos to make things more efficient. But then you take that onto a grander scale when you talk about a small business and then getting into your larger businesses.
Yep.
You mentioned beating to the same drum. I think that's key because I've been in many business meetings where IT's over here, marketing's over here, budgets are here, and it's how do we get everyone working together? Because if you don't have that IT infrastructure in place correctly, everything else can fail.
Absolutely. And though that's probably the biggest challenge. When it comes to IT, for those of us geeks that get it, the IT part of it isn't usually that hard. You can learn a new technology, a new platform. You can use the cloud. But the challenge is making the IT investment the maximum that it can be for the business. It's not IT for IT's sake. It's IT to move the business forward. And that's one of the things where when you get into conversations like, I'd say probably the big three things right now are cloud, security, and dealing with data. And if you look at the cloud, there's an opportunity there. And a lot of organizations adopt something like, we'll call it a cloud-first strategy. I'm looking to leverage the cloud as my first option, and maybe it's not the best option, but let's start there. Most organizations, outside of maybe brand new companies that might be able to go, essentially 100% cloud, most organizations aren't going to be 100% cloud. But they're also not going to be 0% cloud. There's a balance in there. the cloud's been around for a while, and it used to be, we talked about public cloud and private cloud, and then we came up with the term hybrid cloud. And that seems to be, the kind of the prevailing adoption is there's some mix of the cloud that's right for any organization. Sometimes it's not always about saving money. That's one of the promises of the cloud. But sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's business agility. Sometimes it's, for folks that develop their own applications, letting the application developers leverage the cloud so that they can quickly and agilely do their job and not have to keep calling IT to say, hey, I need one more machine or I need some more storage, et cetera. But it doesn't always come out as the answer of the cloud is we're saving a whole lot of money going to the cloud. There has to be other drivers. Same thing when it comes to security. Some organizations, every organization should be, and most are, security conscious. Some organizations take that to a high level. Some take it to a lower level. Some probably need it to be a higher level. But the conversation is around what's the right investment? How do you protect without becoming an obstacle? How do I, no different than being a parent, how do I keep my kids safe without being the overbearing, always, in your face, stop telling me that, Dad, I've got it, and that balance in the IT world is no different than that balance, as a parent or as a person, as a husband, as a friend, et cetera.
Sure.
And dealing with data today it's a huge challenge. 20 years ago, almost all of the data was being created by a person. It was input on a terminal. It was, generated by a human being. Nowadays, vastly more information is being automatically created by your phone, by an application, by a collection of information. And the challenge becomes, one, how do I manage this influx? How do I deal with all of this extra data that now is being created in my business? And how do I leverage it? It's one thing to be able to say, technology time over time continues to, unit costs continue to get reduced. New technologies come out to help kind of crunch the data and not store duplicates. And regardless of how much data there is, are you getting value out of it? What are you, we use terms like business analytics and cognitive computing and, as ways to find, how to get the most value out of the data that you're storing. And the companies that are, forward thinking are making sure, regardless of how much, we certainly should be watching and policing how much data we create and not keeping data that has no value. But how do I inspect the data that I have and make sure that it's returning some value, either to the individuals in the organization, because sometimes internal information is as important as external, but certainly how do I take that information and leverage our ability as an organization to deliver something new, something unique, something better, faster, more financially beneficial to our customers. And, that's no small task.
Yeah. No, and I'm glad you pointed out those three items because they are all really important in your world: cloud, security, data. You wrote an article about this fairly recently, and you talk about the cloud, and you also talk about things like the event. First off, just if we could back up just a little bit for people, that don't know what the cloud is.
Sure.
We hear that term. I happen to be, in a software company, so I understand it, but I didn't understand it, just a couple short years ago. So if you could break that down for people at the lowest level, just so we could understand what we're talking about with all three, actually. Let's start with cloud.
Okay. Yeah, so I think, not to make a pun out of it, the cloud is a nebulous term. in a lot of situations, I could be sitting down with a client of ours, ask everyone in the room, what is the cloud, and I would get as many different answers as there are people in the room. Simply put, I think if you break down the cloud, it's whether or not you create your own cloud, like I said before, a private cloud, or you're leveraging the Azures and Amazons or Googles of the world, or you're leveraging just a particular piece of software. Companies like Salesforce, companies like Microsoft, that can allow you to use their application without you having to build all of the IT infrastructure on your own and create the application on your own, et cetera. Simply put, the cloud is leveraging some sort of consolidation of all of infrastructure and application. We use terms like as a service in our industry. There's infrastructure as a service, which means I'm not going to be buying, the servers and the storage devices and the networking devices. I'm going to leverage that as a service from someone else. You build onto that the platforms, the databases, and we call that platform as a service. You can take it to the final level where we call it software as a service, which means that's the Salesforce.com mentality where I'm leveraging everything. It's their infrastructure, it's their database, it's their application, and I'm just logging in to use it. On a personal side, the cloud could be, hey, my phone, I have Verizon, AT&T, whatever it is. My pictures, they're on my phone, but they're also stored somewhere else. And that would be the cloud. There's no doubt that the reason that it's hard to define the cloud is it's so many different things, and every company vendor out there that has some kind of cloud capability is stretching that definition to try and make themselves unique, so it becomes complicated to define.
Sure. Yeah, and I could recall back, say, going back 20 years ago, had my own small business. We had all of our servers in a closet, so to speak, with a fan, right? Yep. So in the simplest terms in my mind, I see the cloud as, okay, used to have this hardware on site. Again, for small business, it might be in a closet. For larger businesses, they may have a room full of servers. But with the cloud, you would be able to eliminate that, correct?
Correct. Yeah, and I think if you twist that the other way and say the cloud is a mentality, it's a self-driven, allow the user the easiest experience. Some organizations don't use the cloud as a mechanism to get rid of the infrastructure. They use it as a mechanism to provide that kind of self-service, one-stop shop, easy to use, grows and shrinks with the business. One of the value propositions usually of the cloud is instead of me having to go buy, all of the necessary infrastructure and applications and licenses, et cetera, to support what might be, we certainly have to support our peak time of business. Maybe that's end of month, end of year, or, in things like healthcare, it's enrollment time. The cloud can, we use the term elastic. The cloud can grow and shrink for you, allowing, the changes in your business. If you're having a great year and you're, adopting more users, et cetera, then the cloud's going to grow right along with you. If you're having a down year or it's just the off season, the cloud can shrink back down. And, in those cases, you certainly can have a scenario where the cloud can have a financial benefit. In other cases, leveraging the cloud as a methodology for just making everyone's life easier is the other potential benefit. And if you get both of them right, you get an A+.
Yeah.
But it's a challenge, and not every organization, and really being honest, not many organizations can get all of technology right. That's what part of what Razor brings to the table to our customers is, we live and breathe it every day. We have hundreds of customers, large and small, that are experiencing all the challenges you're experiencing, and some of the challenges you yet haven't experienced. And we try to take a very consultative and agnostic approach to what's your challenge, back it with our experience. 100% of the folks at Razor come from the technology world. On the sales side, everyone's been a vendor, before they came to Razor. On the Geek side, everyone's been a customer. We understand, what it's like to walk in your shoes, to sit at that cube or in that conference room and deal with the challenges of IT. And that gives us a little bit of a measure of credibility. It also gives us, a faster time to an end result, because you don't have to explain to me the challenge of IT. I've lived it myself. Everyone on the team at Razor has lived it, and we can accelerate the conversation and really get to the root of the problem. And whether that's any one of the three things that I mentioned, cloud security and data, or any other number of things in the realm of IT. And I've always been a geek. I can't imagine not being a geek. I've been lucky enough through my career that I've been able to build and take. I started out in a really small techie company in the dial-up internet business back in the 90s. Branched that into working for the Hartford Insurance, which is talk about going from a company of 20 to a company of 40,000. I've worked for a startup, and now the best part is, number one, it's not just my job, it's my passion, it's what I love to do. Most days it's not work. It's just an extension of what I love doing anyway. But I get to leverage all that experience, as does everybody at Razor, to put a positive spin on IT, solve a challenge, and give IT that right focus, that business connection, to bring value to our clients that then they can extend to their clients.
That's brilliant. Yeah, and a few years back, Pope Francis visited Philadelphia, and you were quoted saying that the Pope's visit could potentially equate to a major nor'easter. I think that's what you said at the time.
We called it Popapalooza.
Right. Talk about that. Explain why.
It's, the challenge when, something that is going to happen once in a lifetime comes along, the opportunity for there either to be chaos, confusion, additional complexity, overthinking, the problem, solving it the wrong way first, and then having to fix it and solve it the right way. It becomes exponentially more challenging when it's an event like that, where it literally happens once in a lifetime. And if you take that into account in the IT world, it's essentially every major decision that you only get the chance to make once can have that same level of complexity. And it could be something as simple as refreshing your old technology to the new technology. Do I stay with the same vendor? Do I just keep doing what I'm doing? Or is now the time to maybe push it to the cloud? Maybe, change the vendor. And that becomes complex. That becomes scary, for the folks that have to work on the product. Now, that's yet another, technology I have to learn and become proficient in, et cetera, versus I know this one because I've been using it forever. But it's also the opportunity to to be able to sit down with a business and say, what is it we're trying to do, and what's the best way to go about doing it.
Very cool. So, that's one example. Then, we hear terms like disaster recovery or redundancy.
Sure.
Can you talk about that in the event of a flood, of a major hurricane, of a natural disaster? What are you guys doing to help people prepare for that? The term that comes to mind is expect the unexpected.
Yeah, and I think that's, what you have to do. When it comes to, there's a lot of ways to look at, how to be resilient. In most organizations, it starts with making copies of the data, backing up your data. And that's a personal thing as well. I got the note yesterday. I haven't backed up my laptop in 72 days. Time to do it. So some of it is, understanding the value of the data to the business, and then layering on levels of resiliency that A, are financially responsible, and B, protect the business in the event of, there's a lot of different ways when we talk about disaster recovery to look at it. You can look at it, we usually call it the smoking hole theory. What if the whole building just disappeared? That's one way to look at it. And you do have to make sure that you're planning appropriately. A lot of times when we talk with clients, the first thought is, we can't lose anything. And okay, well, here's the price tag for that. Okay, well, maybe we could lose a little, or maybe, being down for, a day is okay for this particular, application or area of the business. But, the crown jewels, we can put more investment into to protect it, at a higher level. So it's usually that conversation of, breaking down the applications or lines of business, and being realistic about how important they really are, and how much investment you need to make to ensure that they're protected appropriately, and then you're not either spending too much money or leaving yourself a gap that could be potentially a catastrophic thing in the event of some kind of disaster. And one of the other some of the things that kind of get overlooked, like we were talking about the Pope's visit, is what if there is a nor'easter? What if all of a sudden no one can come to work because streets are closed or it's a weather event, etc. And making sure that we can still function as a business. It may not have been an actual disaster. It could have just been a series of unfortunate events. And do we have the ability, under all circumstances, to operate the business? Maybe we have to scale it down. Maybe not everyone can work from home. But let's make sure enough people, to sustain business can do their job regardless of what happens, natural disaster or human disaster.
Sure. So Jay, if you can, take us back 20 years, okay, when you first started in your career. Could you have imagined that technology would be where it is today, back then? Did you see this coming?
No. You could probably say, go back 5 years, and I would still say the same thing. The reality is, even looking at, something as simple as the introduction of the cell phone, and that could go back, 35, 40 years for most people. I'm in constant awe and have to stop sometimes and just go, wow, I have this capability. I literally have in my pocket a device that used to fill a 1,000 square foot data center that has the same amount of essential, power and capability. And it continues, technology is not slowing down. We are really at a time in the technical world where it felt like it wasn't going to get any faster. You can't possibly, continue this rate of improvement, and that's not stopping. as well as, introductions of new ways of doing things like the cloud, collaboration in ways that are just amazing. I can be, in my car, on a conversation and collaborating, with video and talking to my phone so that I'm being safe while I'm driving. There's no limit to what technology can do for you, and the adoption rate is amazing. There are very few people, now that don't have some kind of smartphone. Every once in a while, you'll see someone pull out a good old flip phone, and you're like, I remember those days. But it doesn't matter, young, old, whether you're a geek or a grandmother, you're using some kind of technology, not just every day, but probably hundreds of times a day.
We often hear that term that the cell phone has more power than the capacity we had to bring man to the moon.
Yeah.
Is that true?
Yeah, like I said, it used to, what fits in your pocket now used to fill, Houston, we have a problem.
Right. And how can it continue to get faster, smarter, stronger? What's happening? Like when you break it all down, what is getting better? How is it faster? How is it more capacity into a smaller device? What's happening there?
Yeah, so some of it, I think, is, not only is technology, continuing to change and grow, but the tools that are creating that technology are getting, more precise, more accurate. When you look at, the processor inside your laptop or your cell phone, the ability, now we are, there is talk in the techie world that we are getting to, those microns, those nanometers that you can't, at some point you literally can't separate them because they're one. So, but that's where creative things are happening with kind of the next generation quantum computing. Just looking at the problem differently, and some of that takes massive technology to create better technology. And some of it is just the evolution and the smartness of some of the the innovators out there. It used to be Steve Jobs and Bill Gates folks, and now they're names that you're not familiar with yet, but they're it's going on my geek side. It was like the creation of the warp drive in Star Trek, and then how did we get from warp 1 to warp 5 to warp 9.975? Some of that is the sharing of and collaboration of really smart people. In the Star Trek world, it was different worlds, collectively making things better. In our world, it's smart folks sharing ideas, sharing thoughts, not being afraid to take a risk, start a new company that's based on a new idea. That's an extension of maybe something that was being done somewhere else, but drives it to the next level.
That innovation,
Yep.
continued innovation. So Jay, if you think about the next 25 years, what do you see?
That is an amazing question. I think if you take it in 5-year chunks, it's probably easier. I hope in 25 years we've got self-driving flying cars. I'm not sure if that's going to be a possibility or not, but certainly in the next 5 years, technology is going to continue to. I'll even use the term invade every part of our life. You can think about it similar to traveling 25 years ago. You just kind of walked into the airport. Maybe there was a scanner. Right. In my small airport in New Hampshire, you just walked in and you got on a plane. And now there's scanners that you walk through that see you from the inside out. And I think that's where the technology invasion is going as well. The capability in the medical industry to leverage technology to do things like I just said, you see you from the inside out is going to continue. The ability to leverage technology to solve problems that we have today that we can't solve. If you look at just the speed, as we were talking about, of the device that, used to fill a building in Houston that got someone to the moon is, now fits in your pocket. That level of ability to calculate gives, I grew up in a geek world, in a math world, and I used to love statistics. The great part about statistics is, 50% of the time you're 50% right, and anybody can make up numbers. But the ability to crunch those numbers, the faster that you can, gives you the opportunity to, take more data in that we couldn't 20 years ago have been able to use or calculate quickly enough. We talk about in the security world, the encryption algorithms that we use today. It would take the fastest computer in the world, 200 years to crack it. But take the one from 25 years ago, and there's a computer that can crack it in a second. So I think the changes in technology over the next 20 years are going to continue to be leveraged by smart people, by good businesses to improve our quality of life, to improve, the ability to enhance, businesses and create new businesses that don't even exist today. And it'll be faster, it'll be bigger. How much bigger, how much faster is yet to be seen, but it's going to touch everyone on the planet in hopefully positive ways. You can use technology for bad things, and the reality at the end of the day is, thankfully, there's enough smart and caring people out there that we police that in appropriate manners, but the good far outweighs the bad, and then the potential good to come is mind-blowing.
No, and you mentioned health as well, and that's something I interviewed neurosurgeon Dr. Sethi a couple months ago, and we talked about the artificial heart and artificial parts and 3D printers and technology is moving all this. Guys our age, we grew up with the Jetsons, as futuristic way of life, and it's getting there. It seems pretty close. Like you said, you're in your car, you could have video, and even 10 short years ago, we couldn't have imagined what's happening.
I mean, even if you look at cars like Tesla that can drive themselves, you literally can sit behind the wheel. Some of it gets scary because you could take a nap and wind up 6 exits down. But just the potential for the good parts of that, more safety, a car that detects the car in front of it and stops even if you didn't, the ability, for your refrigerator to know you're out of something and either remind you or order it for you. I think those are the things that are going to continue, and it's going to amaze us what technology is going to be able to do to make our lives a little easier, a little better.
Do guys like Elon Musk, Richard Branson, do they excite you because they're constantly pushing the limits?
Yeah. Those are the the modern versions of the Bill Gates and Steve Jobs that just never give up on taking advantage of the capabilities we have today and finding new and interesting ways to use it. It's, definitely. There's 1,000 folks out there that I look at in that kind of that visionary innovator role, and the best part is there's more to come.
So for someone like you who, you go to meetings all the time, you're a road warrior, you talked about liking to solve challenges and problems. What are some of the biggest challenges you've had to face in recent years that may have been inconceivable 5, 10 years ago?
Sure. In the technology world, just things like applications like chatbots and and kind of that self-service. I don't actually have to call and wait on hold. I can solve my problem, myself. If you look back even a few years, the ability, to do that is drastically changed and improved. That gives me more time back in my day, to do what matters to me, as opposed to having to take time out to, take the long way. Technology can certainly help deliver shortcuts, and as long as they're the right shortcuts, I think if you look at the realm of whether it's customer service or the amount of information, the ease of information that you can have access to, challenges like paying your taxes, challenges like you can now go online and do it yourself, and that wasn't there 10 years ago. A GPS that can get me anywhere. I don't have to call AAA anymore or read a map. You should still learn how to read a map. But the reality of the big challenges. For some companies, there are massive challenges. In a lot of ways, though, it's a collection of small challenges, and
Breaking it down,
yeah. and solving them in the right order. Don't kind of the old begin with the end in mind, and that's where I think successful companies using technology properly are breaking it down, or they're coming to companies like Razor and saying, "Hey, you guys have done this a million times before. Help us break it down the right way." And that's the fun part. The best part of my job sometimes has nothing to do with the bits and bytes and blinking lights. It's understanding what a company does and helping them figure out how technology can help them deliver their customers more value.
Yeah. Jay, earlier you talked about data, the importance of data, how people use that data, whether they're using it or not. I think about things like artificial intelligence for retailers, trying to understand consumer behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And really, we're starting to see a lot of that now. So you enter the mall or you're going by the Verizon store and you get an alert. If you need something, walk right in. Then taking another step where you go to a CVS or a Walgreens, the offers that they're presenting are a lot more relevant to your purchasing behavior.
Sure.
Do you get into things like that, or as far as that business intelligence, or is it more helping companies prepare their systems to be able to handle that type of software or business intelligence?
Yeah, so it's both. So Razor is end to end. So everything from the bits and bytes and the wires and the systems that run to improving or creating that application that will give you that, whether it's business analytics, artificial intelligence, et cetera, to make things more relevant. And I think the other great part is in almost every instance, you have the option to choose or not choose. how much technology is going to invade your life. You can turn off the location settings on your phone, so that if you don't want to be, the movie Minority Report, if you know what it was Tom Cruise, and there's a part where he's walking through the mall, and literally the ads are changing specifically to him as he's walking through the mall. No different than when you log into Amazon and you go to buy something. It remembers what you bought. It also may say, hey, people that looked at that or bought that, also looked at this. I think that the ability to make things more relevant to me, or if you're a company to your customers, is a huge advantage. And it's the smart companies out there are definitely leveraging technology and smart applications and artificial intelligence to help deliver that in a I'll say non-intrusive way for the most part. But sometimes the pop-ups in Amazon can get a little annoying. But the reality is looking at technology and looking at your business and getting those two things to be as tightly woven as possible is not only probably one of your biggest challenges, but one of your biggest opportunities.
Yeah. And I would think from a consumer perspective, some people feel it's an intrusion, other people see it as a convenience. My wife mentioned to me a couple weeks ago, she's like, I was on Facebook and it popped up an ad for something I was just looking at, not on Facebook, but on the internet.
Yep.
So how incredible is that? But to her, it was a convenience that,
right.
Okay, cool. Now here's something else that I could take a look at based on but then other consumers may say, I don't like that. So that's kind of a tough balance from a business decision, right?
Yeah, it definitely is. Like I said, at some point, for anyone, it would become invasive. If my phone woke itself up and said, hey, you ought to go look at this, that would probably be too far for me. But, not having, that extra little, here's what other folks looked at, or by the way, you bought paper towels every, 30 days for the last 6 months. We think you might be out of paper towels. Here's a reminder. Oh, look, we only have one roll left. That's technology is a personal choice, and everybody's going to make a different choice on how they want to leverage it. Thankfully, most of it is customizable enough so that you can not be annoyed. And if you're using it right, whether it's your business or personal, if you take technology as a tool to make your life better, then there's something out there that can do that for you.
Right.
Sometimes you got to find it, and sometimes it finds you.
Let's talk about virtual reality.
Sure.
So we actually, at American Real, have an opportunity coming up where we're going to do some testing and do some live audiences with special cameras that's going to film these episodes in VR. And I've been doing some research on it, and there's more and more content coming out for VR. And
Yep.
you have to buy the headgear,
Yep.
but once you're all set up, you feel like you're in the room, or you're in that place, or in that airplane, or whatever it may be. For someone like you who's a geek, what do you think about VR?
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, we've since I was a kid. You've seen in the movies. You're not really here, but you're the holodeck on the Enterprise kind of thing. And VR is in its infancy. It was a little cheesy. Just like if we look at I started out with an Atari.
Right.
If you look at what
Sure.
you have now, the Xboxes and the PlayStations of the world, it's just absolutely amazing. And VR is now getting very, very interesting. It's feeling real. At first it was virtual unreality, but I think where things are going, if you think of that from an education perspective, literally feeling like you are in the classroom,
Absolutely.
could be huge.
Training for battlefield or pilots or
Absolutely, to make that that flight simulator approach where you really are doing it. So I think in the realm of training, in the realm for business, feeling like, hey, maybe we're all at home, but we're collaborating in a way that feels like we're in the same room. Some of the applications that are out there that allow you to share and everybody can make changes on the fly to something. It's a benefit. It's a huge time saver because it's not, hey, I'll make my changes and here you go, Roger. Now you make yours, and then we'll hand it over here, and someone else will make theirs. It's done when we're done, and then we can move on. So I think there's a lot of aspects of technology that are just going to be so interesting in how they can take what we do every day and make it just that much better.
So Jay, let's talk about your backstory. You come from a small town in New Hampshire.
Yep.
And how does a young kid grow up to be an IT executive? What were some of the things that were interesting to you? You said you enjoyed math, but give us more of your backstory.
Sure. So absolutely right. Humble beginnings in Claremont, New Hampshire. A small town. My mother worked 3 jobs to get me to the point where I could go to college. I was always a geek. From the time my brother brought home a TRS-80 computer in 1980, and I'm learning how to do basic programming as a 10-year-old. Right up through high school. Learning even in high school at the time. Getting programming experience in high school in the 1980s was not as nearly as prevalent as it is today. College started out as computer science, and at the time it was mostly programming. I've never been a big fan, as much of a geek as I am. I never had the programmer knack. I did it, and that was really the only thing that was available. And when I was in college, they allowed us to do what they called an individualized major. So I took the computer science background, and I've always been a lover of art, music, etc., and started getting into graphic design at the time. And then, sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. This thing called the internet came along, and I got to take the, know enough about programming to be dangerous, know enough about, how things should look, design, etc., and married the two of those together, and that was my, my first real geek job. Was working for a dial-up internet provider that actually started inside our college. And they said, all right, well, the biggest challenge we have is no one knows how to get connected. And I, grew up back in the bulletin board BBS days when a modem actually, had the coupler device with the suction cups and you sat it down on there. And got offered the opportunity to be that that help desk person, and thankfully for me, I've always been pretty good at being able to take a complex technology thing and break it down and be able to explain it to just about anyone. So got the opportunity to do that for a number of years, and then decided after that company was sold. I could have either gone and done a big .com thing, but at that point I was 24, 25 years old, I guess. Yeah, 25. It was time to settle down and think about starting a family. So I moved into corporate America, worked for the Hartford Insurance, used to love it for the first couple of years. That I was just a number, but it allowed me the opportunity to start a family, and some of the key drivers in me, like my inability to keep my mouth shut, wound me up in a couple of situations at the Hartford that then I wasn't just a number. I was, running and managing a group. I was, one of the key people in my professional career was a woman by the name of Lois Grady. So she was the senior vice president of one of the business divisions at the Hartford, and we were about to go through a merger of the two big IT organizations. So at the time, it was the Hartford and Hartford Life, kind of separate, but one company, and it all got merged together. And the two technology groups, who were very, in our minds, very different. We had to figure out how to, put those two teams together. And I don't even remember how I wound up in Lois's office one day. But apparently, I had said something to somebody that made enough sense that they said, "You should talk to this Jay guy." And sitting in her office, I said, "Here's going to be some of the challenges we're going to have, the differences between the organizations, how we, the different technologies we use that we're going to have to make decisions about. Do we use this one, that one, both, or something completely different?" That wound me up sitting on the senior leadership team, reporting to the CIO for kind of the better part of a year as we did that transition, and from there moved on to different things. But I've always been cognizant of the fact that I've been given some amazing opportunities to grow and learn myself and to help the organization I work with. Even though I've probably interviewed hundreds of people in my career, I've only been through a couple of interviews myself. I've always been lucky enough to kind of just move from one job to the next. And actually, no different. I've been at Razor now for 10 years, but when I met Jim and George, the founders of the company, I was working for a different company, but we were collectively helping a customer. And at some point, they said, "Hey, when you're done doing that, you probably should come over here." And that's exactly what I did. And 10 years later, best job I've ever had. And I think I've probably said that every job I've ever had.
No, that's great. That's great advice, I think, for especially younger folks, that you weren't afraid to speak up. You weren't afraid to go into that office and give your opinion. And I would say a lot of people are probably fearful of that, right? Of voicing their opinion. But a great example that had you not done that, that could have literally changed the course of your career.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think, as long as you have something good to say, you should say it. I've always believed that, and on the flip side, if you don't have anything good to say, don't say anything at all. Those are, things my mom taught me. But, there's nothing wrong with a little bit of risk. And even when it comes to technology choices, sometimes you have to take a little risk to be able to, kind of leapfrog, your IT organization. And, the good news is there's usually enough people out there that are willing to, speak up. Base it in fact. Don't just speak up. Don't say, "This is horrible, it's going to completely fail." But if you have a couple of reasons why, either we might want to relook at this, or do something different. In technology, there's always a million ways to do any one thing. And for each organization, taking a little risk, basing it in fact, and doing the right thing can have the biggest benefit there is. No different than if I hadn't opened my mouth. Who knows? I certainly wouldn't be sitting here today. Something would have would have changed, and I would have wound up in a different place.
Yeah. Who were some of your heroes growing up?
Biggest hero would be my mom. I only got to spend 19 years with her. Lost her to cancer. But, woman that worked 3 jobs, never showed, the concern, the fear, backed me like no other. She's certainly my number one. I think right behind that would be my wife. Same kind of scenario, the glue that's kept me together, probably as much a hero as a lifesaver. Growing up, it was my brother, the guy that probably, made me the geek I am today.
And you were a lot younger than your siblings, right?
Yeah, so when I was born, my mom was 43, my dad was 46, my brother was 9, and my sister was 21. I actually have 2 nieces that are older than I am. Had to grow up in school, explaining to teachers, no, that's not my cousin. Her mom is actually my sister. And if you do the math, one of my nieces is 4 years older than me, one is 4 months older than me. That makes my mom and my sister pregnant at the same time. Always been normal to me.
Sure.
But I think when I think about my brother as a hero, he was 18 when I was 9. He was going off to college, and he had girlfriends, and he brought the computer home that probably was the pivotal moment in me being the geek that I am. And there's a lot. I've already mentioned Lois Grady, absolutely a hero. My kids even know her name. She had whenever one of the people on her team would move on, she would always get the whole group to sign a copy of Dr. Seuss, Oh, the Places You'll Go. And that became, a story that I've read to my kids 1,000 times. And something that I've adopted and have done for those key people, that left me and went on to bigger and better things. And I think you always have to have a hero. Right now I'd say my hero is, probably my best friend, colleague, Tony Gaeta. Half mentor, a little bit of father, best sales guy I've ever met, and somebody every day I'd like to be a little bit more like.
Awesome. And as you're talking about that, especially when you give the scene of you as a kid with your older brother and him bringing home the computer, it's those moments that maybe we don't even realize it, but now that we're talking about it and thinking about it, I feel it's really crucial to spend time with, whether it's our kids, nieces and nephews, younger folks. Take time, because you never know, like in a situation like that, how that could change the course of their life. Expose them to things.
Yep.
Give them opportunity. I had the chance to take my son out to LA this week. We did 6 interviews. Pulled him out of school, but the best education. So I'm a big proponent of that. I'm glad you talked about that, and just would like to know your thoughts from a technology standpoint on how important that is.
Yeah, so if we keep going on with the kids, my kids are generation YouTube. They would rather sit with a device and in some cases even, I don't understand it, watch someone play a game.
That's right.
Instead of playing the game themselves. But I always there's probably 10 or 15 YouTube channels that we watch together, and they're usually what's interesting to them, and then I find myself going, that is kind of cool, I don't generally watch the ones where it's watching someone play a game, but watching my daughter. There's a guy, Bobby Duke, who's an artist, and just will just come up with this crazy idea. It's usually something involving wood, or as he says and my daughter says, wood. But if it wasn't for YouTube, he'd never have the ability to be able to share that. And some of the things that you can see out there, it's just amazing.
And it's education.
How it's education, and it's fascinating. Leveraging technology, in ways like that. Our ability to share information, in 2019 is absolutely amazing. It's everybody can have a voice. It's sometimes it's not a voice you want to hear. No different than turning on the news. Sometimes you don't want to see that story. You certainly have the ability to switch to the next page.
We have choice.
But the amount of just amazing and interesting things that are out there, and the reality that you actually get to see it, that's where technology is going to continue to go.
So I have to ask you, you said your mom passed when you were 19.
Yeah.
How does a 19-year-old cope with that? How did you get through that?
I grew up in a day. And I think my wife would still say I'm 45 going on 20.
Yeah.
Family. My wife and I had known each other for a couple of years. I was a sophomore in college, so I'd probably known her a year and a half. We actually got together 3 weeks before my mom passed.
Oh, wow.
So certainly couldn't have gotten through it without her.
Yeah.
And I think the other part is she prepared me well enough that I could. I was lucky enough, as I've said, to always kind of get a new opportunity. My first job actually was I worked for a men's formal wear store, and how I got the job actually was as I was renting the tux for the prom. The owners went, "Hey, you look pretty good in the tux. What do you think about doing our fashion shows?" And a little bit flattering. I guess I was a runway model for a few years, and then that turned into a job there. And luckily, thankfully, they also had a store in the town that I went to college. So even though things like my mom passing, I had a job. I found another opportunity while I was at college. I lived in a apartment building, and the landlord had a T-shirt screen printing business down in the first floor. And one day he's walking by, and I got my computer out, and I'm doodling something, and he's like, "Hey," I said, "What?" He goes, "Do you think you could print me out a big K?" We were in Keene, New Hampshire, and he was printing shirts for the high school or something. I think it was the high school. And I said, "Yeah, sure." That turned out, months and years later, I had an office downstairs in his screen printing shop, and I became, one of the designers for him that, would create either the artwork or whatever for folks, T-shirts, etc. And all of those things kind of just happening, I think are, the reason why a 19-year-old got through that. Not that it was easy, but got through it.
What advice would you have for others that might be going through the loss of a loved one, especially a youngster?
Don't try to do it alone. Whether it's professional help or family, friends, that's something you can't do alone.
Don't be afraid to lean on people.
You have to. I mean, there was a time in my life that I thought therapy's for wimps, and there's a time in my life now where I couldn't get by without it.
Any regrets?
Yeah, I think as Frank Sinatra said, regrets. I've had a few. I've probably had too many to mention. I think. I think for me it would be, not being the best husband or dad that I could have been at times. If you ask yourself, what's that one thing you'd go back and change? I'm pretty sure I'd pick something in that, husband and father category.
Yeah. Many of us could say the same. Absolutely. What's your biggest fear?
I think fear changes. My biggest fear today was coming in here and not being interesting enough or articulate enough. In general, I would say my biggest fear is failure, letting someone down, not doing my best. We've already said I'm an over communicator, and there are times where I just want to get that point across, and I'll keep saying it, and I might spin it and say it a different way. I had actually the time that I reported to the senior leadership team at the Hartford. I used to have a one-on-one with the senior vice president of IT at the time every week, and I'd walk in, and every week, I'd wrap it up with, how am I doing, and what can I do better, and probably it wasn't very far along when he just looked at me and said, "You're doing a great job. If you mess up, I'll let you know."
Good advice.
So I think that's for me. The fear of failure. The fear of not doing the right thing. And it's an everyday process. I remind myself of that conversation. Where hey, I'll tell you when you make a mistake. You don't have to come
Sure.
in and ask it 3 different ways. I used to, especially with that senior leadership team, there were times where I'd say something and I didn't get the reaction I expected, so I would just say it differently. I'm great at analogies and acronyms and whatnot, and sometimes they just say, "Yeah, no, we heard you. It's just not what we want to do." I try every day, to learn something new, to not repeat a mistake that I've repeated in the past. Sometimes I'm good at it, and sometimes I'm not. Sometimes I have to be reminded. Sometimes I have to be pushed. But I accept that. And if you try to resist it, it just gets a little bit more painful. So, thankfully, the folks in my life that do the pushing don't push too hard.
And as you're saying that, I'm thinking about, isn't it okay to celebrate the wins, even the small wins along the way? I don't think we, as society, professionals, give ourselves enough credit on a daily basis, because we are doing a lot of good things all the time. So that's one of our missions here is, we're trying to help people. It's kind of a self-help, self-discovery show. How do we improve? How do we learn from our guests? And, how do we help each other become our best selves?
Yeah.
And, I could see someone like you, yes, you're fearful of failure, but at the same time, you probably have 1,000 wins for that one failure. So constantly, reminding ourselves, take a step back, a deep breath to say, everything's okay.
Yeah.
I'm on the right track. I'm doing good. I'm helping a lot of people. And yes, I still have to be aware and responsible, but it's okay to celebrate.
Yeah, I think so. I completely agree. Among many things, being a geek, etc. I'm a lover of music.
I understand you have quite the vinyl collection.
I have over 1,000
That's
vinyl albums, and I think partially because I'm a little bit retro. I'm a product of the '80s, and also it's for me, it's a daily part of my life. And a 12-inch record is 22 minutes aside. I start a lot of days throwing an album on,
Interesting.
grabbing a cup of coffee, catching up on the news, go hop in the shower, flip it over, play the other 22 minutes while I'm getting ready and getting myself out the door. And I think there's nothing wrong with living life 22 minutes at a time.
I love that. Actually, 44 is my favorite number, and I always break that in two, so that has relevance to me, and I could see what a great way to start your day. I was actually going to ask you, do you have any practices you do? Do you get, because I could only imagine the amount of information going through your mind on a daily basis between your own business and all the clients. Where do you find your downtime? Where do you find your headspace? Do you do any meditation, anything like that?
Yeah, so very recently, I have started doing meditation, and I find it extremely relaxing and setting, because reminding myself to stop and slow down is something I haven't always been good at, and I need to be better at anyway. I'm a hack of a guitarist, but I love to play, and that's another one of my just kind of think without thinking, relax, hit my internal reset button, and smile a little, laugh a little while I do it.
How much pressure are you under on a daily basis?
That's a good question. I don't always feel it. The days I feel it are when there's an absolute deadline. Something we've got to get to a customer, by this afternoon.
Proposal.
Yeah, exactly. But on a daily basis, it's thankfully I work for a company where there's not a lot of pressure. There's not there's no micromanagement. It's very much kind of self-paced. Get the job done, and I'm not going to worry about how you got the job done as long as you got it done. Same thing for being in the office versus either working from home or being with the customer. As long as the customer's happy and we're getting the job done, where and how that work gets done isn't necessarily a focus. So I think that helps maintain a low pressure.
Sure. You probably have great systems in place. They're the best.
Yep.
To be able
we try to. Part of what we do as a business, as we were talking about the cloud earlier, is Razor has a cloud. We call it Razor Cloud. And the reality is, the systems and the software, et cetera, that we use, we always call it it's eat your own dog food. The stuff that we might recommend to a customer is the stuff that we ourselves use, and that says something about the company, and I think it says something about the mentality of the folks that are in it.
Just have a few more questions.
Sure.
I'd like to do what we call kind of rapid fire.
Sure.
Where I just mention something and love your response.
Yeah.
What are some of your favorite books?
Oh, I would say number one, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Love that book.
Fiction?
Wish the movie was better. It's sci-fi based, so I think the geek and sci-fi kind of start to blend. But I spent a lot of time in the car, and do a lot of Audible. You know, there's there's the times where the favorites are the 7 Habits and the Good to Greats, etc. And there's times where it's Janet Ivanovich, Stephanie Plum stories that make me laugh.
Whatever you're in the mood for that day.
Yeah, it changes. I would say sci-fi is always in there. Same thing when it comes to movies. But a good story is a good story.
And Audible is a sponsor of ours, so what we'll do is we'll give a free download to anyone who's listening. If they go to audible.com, we'll put your name in as the / and they'll get
Awesome.
a free download.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't. I don't think I could live without that.
It's a great
And
service.
I wish I did more physical reading, but it certainly is a way for me to get to partake in the books I don't have time to read.
Sure, you're making the most of your time.
Sure.
With all your travels. Favorite foods?
Favorite foods. Oh, nothing beats a good steak. Fan of pizza. Fan of a lot of things that don't fit that low carb, low sugar approach to life that I like to take.
You're staying in good shape, though.
I tried it. It doesn't get any easier as we get older.
That's true.
As we could both attest to. I think one interesting thing for me is there's really not a food that, or even a region or nationality of food that I don't like. I'm
with
a
you.
big fan of sushi. I was lucky enough with one of my jobs to do a fair amount of international travel and got to experience authentic food from different countries. And there's been very few times that I haven't at least said it wasn't bad. And most of the time it's wow, that's really good.
Yeah.
When I grew up, growing up in New Hampshire, it was a meat and potatoes, kind of lifestyle. When I outside of my mother's spaghetti sauce, there was nothing that even had a little spice to it. A lot of flavor, but not a little spice. When I met my wife, who comes from a family that cooks a little spicy, I found out I like spicy food.
What motivates you most?
My biggest motivator is getting the job done, and meeting all the requirements. Setting a goal and getting there. I've been lucky enough that I've gotten a fair share of, like you said, if there don't focus on that one loss, focus on the 1,000 wins that came before it. I think the motivator for me is I've got a pretty good track record, and I want to continue to build that. I want to continue to have opportunities to learn and grow every single day. It surprises me sometimes. There's the saying, if you didn't learn something new today, the day was wasted. I think, in the industry that I'm in and being the geek that I am, that's probably 10 things a day. And I'm lucky enough to have the opportunity to have this be my career, as well as it's what I love to do. It's not a job. It's a half a hobby, and my whole being believes in what I do, on and off the clock.
That's so awesome. You found your passion and you're living it, which is.
That's kind of the, you ask the question, what advice you were talking about, what advice would you give to kids growing up these days? And I think doing something you love, boy, it certainly outweighs just doing something either for the money or whatnot. Not everybody's lucky enough to be able to do that. And, in those scenarios, make sure you're giving yourself enough balance for the things that do, make you tick. And never give up trying to, get to the point where you can really do something that you love.
What annoys you, Jay?
I think the smartest guy in the room that keeps reminding you they're the smartest guy in the room. I've sometimes been referred to as the smartest guy in the room, but I've never felt it. I've always believed in when it came to hiring people, trying to find people, that are smarter than I am. And thankfully, there's enough smart people out there, and I'm not smart enough that I've succeeded pretty well there. I think wasting time, definitely. There's nothing worse than spending a lot of time on something only to find out that, you might as well have not done it. And that's a challenge in business, because sometimes, especially with being more on, in a sales organization, sometimes you are working for a customer and there's no kind of reward on the other side. Good news for us is, we win more than we lose. Again, it's that, let's focus on the wins on the left and not the loss or two on the right. Those would be the top two.
If you were to take out your cell phone and call your 20-year-old self, or 20-year-old Jay, what would you tell that kid?
I think I'd tell him it's all going to be okay. Trust yourself. Yeah, I don't think I would want to, like I said, I've got some regrets, but I don't think I wouldn't want to do anything different.
You wouldn't want to change course.
Yeah. It's been too fun of a ride.
Awesome. Jay, this has been awesome. It's been educational. It's been fun. It's enlightening. And I think we're going to give a lot of people some insight into technology, maybe that they didn't know before. So we appreciate you coming on. One last question before I let you go.
Sure.
Ultimately, what do you want your legacy to be?
Number one is, my almost 18-year-old daughter and 13-year-old son, to set them up for the same kind of success and joy that I've had in my life, and to pass that on. I think before I'm done with my career, I'd like to be more of an educator. Teach some college courses, or it's always been something, I get to weave that into my current job in a lot of cases, because that's what we're trying to do is educate and share the right approach to technology. But I think that's a bucket list for me, is to do that in more of the traditional setting. And who knows, with technology, I might be doing that, staying at home and wearing virtual reality goggles in our virtual classroom. Yeah, and I just, I've never worried about having a legacy that, was more than, that was important really to anyone beyond the folks that I've my family, the folks that I've worked with, customers that I've supported, and I don't think I would want to change that.
Awesome.
I'm okay with the, as the song goes, it's the dash in between. I think I'm good with the dash so far.
Jay Gagne, I respect your humility and your intelligence. I appreciate you coming on, and welcome to the American Real family.
Thank you very much. I couldn't have enjoyed it anymore, Roger.
Thanks for tuning into American Real. Be sure to visit our website, americanreal.tv, or search for us on iTunes or YouTube for past episodes. While you're there, please rate us or leave us a review, as that helps others find our show. I am truly grateful and appreciate all of your support. At American Real, we're on a mission to help as many people around the world fulfill their dreams and obtain their goals. If you'd like to be part of our inner circle or want one-on-one coaching, check out the American Real Learning Academy, where we have self-help groups and courses so you can build the best you. We also have a new Facebook group where you can connect with high achievers from around the world. If you want to go even further, maybe you're determined to write your own book or launch your own podcast, contact me today to see if we could help. You can reach me through Instagram or Facebook, or email me directly at roger@americanreal.tv. And speaking of podcasting, our next course will be starting soon. So if you're interested in launching your own podcast, join me and Podcast Your Passion. I'll take you through my 8-week course where I'll mentor you to build a world-class podcast. I'm only taking on a small group of people who want to share their passion through broadcasting, where I'll have you up on iTunes and YouTube within weeks so you can podcast your passion. Click on the link below for more information. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.